Well, ladies and gentlemen, here we are, 30 minutes gone past 7 o'clock. It is time for Freshly Pressed, right here on Smooth Breakfast with Patty Baker.
And Shopper Martins and you, Lagos. And today we have
A full
a
studio.
full studio.
I'm loving this. What's today? Thursday. I forgot for a second. I was about to say Wednesday.
And it's not
I'm
even a
loving this
throwback.
Thursday lineup. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so in the studio with Kaide and myself, we have got Lakunle. Good morning.
Morning, Shopware. Morning, Cloudy. Good
Morning
morning,
was
the
here
world.
nice and early, by the way. I quite like it. Mr. C, how you doing?
Good morning, Shopper. Good morning, Kaide. Good morning, Lakanle. Good morning, Lagos, and happy birthday, Mama C.
Oh,
Hey,
Mama
happy
C, happy
birthday.
birthday. I love
No
that.
one saying good morning, Fiddle.
And
That's it.
Fidel, we have got a new voice in the studio. If you had joined us up on YouTube earlier on in the week, you would have seen the face already. Now it's time to hear the voice. Fidel, good morning. How are you?
Fine. Good morning, Lagos.
Oh, look at that.
Morning, guys.
Welcome to your first Freshly Pressed. How does it feel?
Yay.
Yay! We're very excited to
Thank you for
have him
having me.
on the show because Fidel has been this voice on Lagos Talks that always comes in with the analysis and the reasoning. And I was like, I feel like I know what his profession is, and I was right. And yes, we had to have him on the show.
You want to put it
Love
out there?
it. No, I want to put out youtube.com/smooth 981 FM Lagos. That is where you can go for the live stream. Hello, people. And you can
And
also leave
also-
your comments up on that platform.
Also use the hashtag FreshlyPress91 on Twitter. And don't forget to send your messages to 0809 Should we dive to the first story?
All right, we've got, in fact, our first few stories kind of tie in. They go, one into the other, into the other. So we might just take them all and have like a big roundtable discussion. So starting off from this day newspaper, we have this one in cash-strapped federal government approves 3 trillion naira, which is 17.5% of the 2022 budget to sustain a subsidy. All right. Now, this is the Federal Executive Council, which approved the sum at its weekly meeting in Abuja. And this is 17.5% of the total of 17.126 trillion naira for 2022. And this money, this 3 trillion, considering the fact that, Mr. C, that we have a 18-month postponement of the fuel subsidy removal only comes in for 12 months, right?
Yes.
Okay, so what would you say about this? I mean, more subsidy, more boring, more analysis.
Okay. Thank you, Shopper. So, a very interesting day happened yesterday, and the Federal Executive Council approved an additional 3 trillion naira as fuel subsidy for the 12-month extension. Initially, the fuel subsidy was supposed to end in June 2022, and the sum of 443 billion naira had been earmarked or set aside. Now, the federal government suddenly discovered that it wasn't the best time to remove the fuel subsidy.
Oh, so suddenly, I
Yes,
mean,
suddenly in the voice of the band. Anyway, so they now believe 3 trillion naira is now the new sum that will take us through the proposed 12-month extension. Listeners, guess what? The 12-month extension comfortably takes them past next year's election.
Oh, wow.
oh well,
So,
would you believe it? What a surprise.
interesting coincidence. So, here we are. The deficit for the existing budget this year is 6.39 trillion naira, which is 37% of the 17.126 trillion naira budget. Now, this 3 trillion naira is an additional 17.5% of the existing budget. So you have a situation where your deficit runs into 54%, and you're not using that for capital projects. So it's a big question. And then you want a question struck my mind. I was discussing with Lakunle before the show. 443 billion was voted for January to June 2022.
Mm-hmm.
But from July 2022 to June 2023, it's suddenly 3 trillion now. How? What are the figures underpinning that amount? And again, it comes back to the question, how much petrol does Nigeria every day.
Now that you mentioned that, let's quickly
When you
segue
say, by the way,
into
I love
our
how it
next
says
story.
Nigeria. Do you mean Nigeria or Nigeria and the countries around Nigeria?
Yeah.
But yes, Kaide, you are right. We need to segue into that story.
Okay, so the House of Representatives set to unravel fuel subsidy controversy, and they're investigating state refineries. Now, the Speaker, that's Mr. Bajabiamela, has also set up an ad hoc committee to investigate the actual state of refineries to ascertain what it would cost to bring the refineries back to life again. So, I mean, what do you say about this?
Okay, so with regards to the investigation to find out why the refineries are not working and what it will take, I think there's a lack of political will on the part of the executive to get those refineries up and running. And part of it is the fact that they're an easy source of money. You vote money for turnaround maintenance, little or nothing is done. The refinery still doesn't work. The contractors are not held to account, and it's business as usual. Now, beyond that, it's a big shame that we do not know what we consume every day. Now, Shopware raised a very interesting point. Is it Nigeria and the countries around Nigeria that constitute the figure put forward by the NNPC?
Okay.
NNPC suggests that 65.7 million liters of petrol are consumed every day.
Do you think we consume less?
It has to be much less. There really is no explanation for that figure, except we're including the countries around us. And it will make sense to include them because the next cheapest country that sells petrol around us is Niger, 79 cents a dollar. So it makes more sense for a marketer or anyone given a contract to lift petrol, to collect it at the ex-depot price of 145 now thereabouts, and move it across the border to stuff like 500, 600, 700 a liter. It makes more sense. So it's a welcome development. Whether we will actually get the true result
In 4 weeks.
in 4 weeks, but 4 weeks should be enough. It's whether the people have been sincere, and it's good that he said, speak to the industry stakeholders. Do not restrict your investigations or your fact-finding search to NNPC because NNPC is an interested party. Speak to foreign experts, speak to local experts, find out what is the real figure. Because if we're paying, if they voted 3 trillion based on 65.7 million liters a day, where in fact, in actual fact, we might be consuming about 30, then the bigger question is that excess amount, who's collecting it?
All right. 0809444091.
Now,
Send your messages to
a story that kind of ties in with this was it's a little bit of it's a short story, and some might be like a non-story, but let's take it from the Guardian newspaper. And luckily, I'll come to you for this one. Abia NSCDC command decries illegal oil refineries. The Abia State Command of the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps yesterday lamenting through its state commander Ayinla Olo, who said that the operation sites were discovered during a sting operation conducted by their anti-vandalism team. And he seems to be quite shocked that there are illegal refineries in many of the oil producing communities in the state. It kind of reminds me of a conversation that we had on Lagos Talks between Mr. C and Cheta when both were in the studio with us, which reminds me of like what I would like to say is maybe the life cycle of an oil producing community, wherein oil is found and then interests are raised, then digging and fracking and all sorts start coming up, pollution, communities being marginalized, and so on and so forth, and then violence, illegal refineries, and that's just part of the cycle. I mean, what would you say about this?
The story is short. Sting operation is become one of our favorite words as far as phrases when security items are discussed or mentioned, even by the people empowered by law to secure us.
Hey, it has a flavor, Sting operation.
Exactly, makes it look like yes, the big deal. Now, for anybody to say that they're surprised, I mean, he should just be losing his job on the spot. That's your job anyway, in the first instance. And then you now say you are surprised that happened. But what is it about illegal operations in our oil industry that we don't know? The ones who mine the crude illegally, the ones who break pipelines, the ones who go to hijack trucks on the road. What is it about all the illegal operations that happen in our oil industry from mining to the pump in the fuel stations that we don't know exist already. So for the man as high up as he is to be saying that he's shocked that that exists, I mean, then we should query how he got that high in the job. That's as short as I can say about that story. And we don't need to push further.
I see, but Mr. C wants to add something, so maybe we do need to push it further. Your thoughts?
It's interesting that nobody was arrested. Not a single soul.
And it is in operation.
How
They just recovered the
interesting.
cooking pots amongst other
That's
things.
true. 10 cooking pots and disconnected pipes. Yeah, those were what were recovered.
Oh, wow.
It's a
So-
short story. Let's move on.
Well, luckily has said it. Going over to your messages up on 0809 at 4440981. We have a message in from Jele who says on fuel subsidy, President Buhari told us clearly in his interview, in his channel's television interview, that whatever happens from next year is none of my business.
Golden caps.
Fuel subsidy and how much we waste is therefore none of his business, says Dilly. And we've got a message up on youtube.com/snooze981 FM Lagos. And King's Kid says, why isn't NNPC engaging these countries directly and chose companies to deliver petrol to them, thereby earning us income as a country?
Shall can I quickly say something to that? That is
Please say
one of my positions from time immemorial. Now the NNPC has that opportunity now that is being incorporated as a company. Can we approach at least Republic of Benin, who we jokingly say is ready to become Nigeria's 37 states, and go and incorporate NNPC there? And we have NNPC filling stations there, and we also sell at 162 that we are selling here, or maybe 170. Just put a
So we can
premium.
increase the
So
revenue as
that
well.
if how big is the whole of Republic of Benin is just about the size of Niger State. About Niger State, Niger is possibly bigger than the whole of Republic of Benin. So if there can be filling stations in Niger State, the NNPC should be able to have the capacity to put filling stations in Republic of Benin. It is not rocket science. If you say that we are stealing, they are going there. Okay, so let's just move on.
Luckily,
these things
take a
are
breath,
real
take a
quick.
breath. It's okay.
Okay, so let's talk about what's happening in premium times. Court stops federal government from funding police trust fund from Federation account. Now, it's a long story, but I'm going to come to you, Mr. C. And, or rather, I'm going to come to you, Lakule. Mr. C, Lakule. Okay, both of you can chime in. Where I'm going with this is that, Governor Nyesom Wike, he's talked about the fact that along with the other governors, basically, they're saying that they're challenging the planned deductions and the law on which it is premised, and they've taken them to court basically. So what does this mean?
Okay, so thank you, Kennedy. So the Nigerian Police Trust Fund was set up in 2019, and it was ostensibly to be funded from contributions or deductions made from the Federation account. Now, Governor Wike of Rivers State challenged that setup, that arrangement, and claimed that it was illegal, and that by virtue of sections 161 and 162 of the 99 Constitution, the only entities that were eligible or legally allowed to share money or collect money from the Federation account were the federal government, the various state governments, and the local governments. That the Nigeria Police Trust Fund is not an entity recognized under the Constitution to collect money directly from the Federation account.
Okay.
And on the basis of that, he further argued through his lawyer that all monies that had been deducted so far for that exercise that were directly linked to River State should be refunded. And the court agreed.
But since it's the federal government that does the allocations, right, and the police are under the federal government, basically it's the federal police. So can they decide? Can they just use their?
No. So what the federal government should have done was, from the police allocation, they should have taken the trust fund funding. They shouldn't have taken it directly from the Federation account, because that is clearly illegal. And it portends a very grave omen, because the court also said that companies that have been contributing directly to the police trust fund should stop,
Okay.
because it's not constitutional, it's not legal. And I was discussing again with Lakuni downstairs, and the education tax fund will probably suffer the same fate if it's challenged in court, But it's the same setup.
Hmm.
So these are very interesting times, and the other 35 states were not included because they didn't sue. But on the back of this judgment, they can then apply for similar refunds because the police force is a federal creation. It belongs to the federal level. Therefore, the states and the local governments have no business funding it.
Thank you.
Unless
so-
you are going to go for state police, which some
So,
people
so
keep
this
bringing
also
up.
another argument in favor of decentralizing our police.
Luckily, this is your
You
hill.
always-
You're going to die on this hill. It looks
You need
like.
a soapbox to continue this conversation. But it's okay. Please send your messages to us on WhatsApp 0809-444-0981 and also watch the live feed. It's on youtube.com/smooth 981FM Lagos. Okay, a few messages popping in. Well, this one in from Nick says, "Good morning, everyone. Completely agree with Lakunle. The man is simply lying to himself. As far as NAC is concerned,
As far back as 2008.
yes, when you served in Bielsa State, these things existed and we knew them. There's a connivance with the security operatives. Those who don't cooperate are arrested, while those who do
Share proceeds with the security operatives, says
All right.
from the Papa.
thank you.
All right, we've got this one in Vanguard newspaper. Senate moves to empower federal government to seize assets acquired through corruption. I feel like this is a case of when one door closes, another one opens, or a window opens up. So now it's a bill sponsored by Senator Suleiman Abdukwari of APC Kaduna North, and the bill seeks to give the federal government enabling powers to seize and confiscate assets acquired by corrupt public officers, money launderers, and criminals involved in terrorist financing and other crimes. Quarry explained that the main objective of the bill is to provide for the establishment of a department in the relevant organizations to manage these forfeit assets. Going on to say, a contributor to the debate, Senator Smart Adeyemi said, if people have properties they cannot account for, the government should go after them.
Oh, wow.
I see smiles and shaking heads, and so I'm just going to go straight to you, Mr. C, for your thoughts.
Shopper, very quickly, this is a bill that is not needed. We have the Money Laundering Act. We have the Act that sets up the EFCC. We have the ICPC Act. We have the NDLEA Act. We have the Criminal Act, Criminal Code Act. And all of these pieces of legislation.
Now, one thing, just from what you're saying, one thing I've always wanted to find out, why do we have so much duplication in all these different acts?
Well,
I'm going to go wait, hold on, I'm not going to Fidel or Mr. C right
Fidel,
now.
Mr. C.
Fidel, I think you have something to add to this. Okay, let's start, let's go for
Yeah,
it. Fidel.
I feel like we were discussing this thing, and I feel like we have so many laws. We have laws governing everything. The problem is not the availability of the law.
Are you about to say
The
implementation?
problem is just implementation. It's just implementation, and sometimes maybe some of these laws seem a bit vague, but that's the reason why we now have the courts. So the courts will now interpret it or explain how it's supposed to be applied. But the basic problem is just implementation of these laws, basically.
So hold on, I wonder, are the new laws that keep coming up, are they supposed to misdirect us from the fact that implementation of the old ones haven't happened? Because I wonder why they keep coming up. Or do we not know do our lawmakers not know that there are already acts that deal with this?
I mean, look, sometimes it's just a case of, okay, so this law is out, and then set up this agency to do what the other agency can do. So, I mean, before an agency of the government can do anything, there must be a law backing that agency to do a certain thing. So you set up this agency to do what another agency can do, and sometimes it's just, okay,
Who then gets jurisdiction, though?
yeah, so
Oh,
well,
yes,
I
we've
was
seen
going to
that
go
come
there.
up.
Sometimes it just be like ego. So okay, I'm the brain behind this thing. So I want this law to fly. I want this agency to fly. And then sometimes maybe a particular ministry, because I mean every other MD is domiciled under a ministry. So they're like, okay, I want to be in charge of this thing, like you said, the jurisdiction. But the basic foundation is there are ministries, there are laws that can handle these things. We just keep duplicating. The problem remains implementation.
So do we need a Department of Implementation?
Okay,
really.
Okay, so let me chip in very quickly, right? None of these agencies has as part of its core functions
Mhm.
managing real estate, managing property. That's it. It's so simple.
So anyone
So-
can go after this.
Luckily,
So what you have in street English, what we have this law doing is actually creating a department of estate management in all of these agencies.
Oh wow.
So when EFCC seizes a house, for example,
mm,
they create a department in there and they employ people there who managing that property. When ICPC does the same thing, they create their own department with managing. I mean, meanwhile, we have a ministry of housing where they have professional estate managers, quantity surveyor, all of that, employ their own earn salaries. Why don't you make a single law, whatever, to say, look, when all of you sees all these things, transfer
Funnel it
it
over
to
to-
these people to hold in trust for government, because it's government anyway.
Luckily, money cannot be made when there's no confusion. Money is made in Nigeria when there's confusion.
on
And
that note,
let's move on real
Jinx,
quick. 'cause of
yes,
our time.
we're gonna move on to messages coming up on the WhatsApp 0809 444 981 and coming up on youtube.com/smooth981FM Lagos. Do remember, you can send your tweets to us at smooth981FM on Twitter and use that hashtag freshlypressed981. Baba Femi Onagboson says the Nigeria oil and gas sector under the guidance of NNPC and DPR is a house of corruption coming closely after the federal government, Senate, and House of Representatives, CBN, and Nigeria Police. I thought the
Oh,
list was
wow.
going to go on.
That's
Baba
a lot.
Femi, and he goes on to say, "I see no hope for these bodies. You gotta have hope, right? Otherwise,
Mhm.
what's the point of Pandora's box?"
Let's see.
Everybody
Ty
just
here
lie down.
says everybody wants to be a rock star in any dispensation. Imagine fan and customs fight over Twitter because of access to airport facilities.
On Twitter.
Yes,
Yeah.
fight on Twitter.
And Ken from Stereo Larry says, luckily you are right. Sting operation, of course, sting operation. You did this to Nigeria. These illegal refineries have been there for goodness knows how long. And for the 65.7 million liters they say we consume, your gas is as good as mine. And he goes on to say, guys, where's Mr. Integrity in all this? I laugh in Spanish. Moving on.
All right, so our next story comes from the Premium Times, and here, this one's a bit of a. Well, let's put it to you luckily. It says reps seek to create 111 seats for women at the National Assembly, 108 at the state assemblies. Okay, so I mean, when I read the headlines, I had mixed reactions to it at first. But what are your thoughts?
Okay, so like I typically ask everywhere, some of my friends call me Mr. What problem are we trying to solve? So I'm asking the question when I saw the story, what's the problem we're trying to solve with this bill? We're saying that women are underrepresented in politics, government, blah, 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 blah. Fair argument, we need to increase the numbers.
Okay.
Fair argument, but are we going about it the right way? In my opinion, I do not think we are. If we're in a democracy and you say that people should indicate interest in positions, yeah. So if, for example, this number that by the title of this story,
Yeah.
they seek to create, does that mean that they are creating additional seats, 111 seats, or they are excising 111 seats of the current 485 and reserving it for women? These are about one third of the current seat in the House of Rep and another 1/3 in the Senate. Are they reserving it for women, or they are creating new seats? So if it is that they are creating those new seats, which part of each of the states with this new seat be representing? If would they be creating new constituencies? If they are not, or if they are, so would that then mean that they will specify every time that this particular constituency in each state, it must be a woman that must run in all the parties?
In one word and in one sentence, because of our time, really, what should be done in this regard?
It's a democracy, for crying out loud. The best we can do is encourage women to participate in politics, have them sponsored to run for offices. There are some things that I don't think we can be legislating on. This is one of them. We can't legislate people's participation. We can encourage, we can promote, we can sponsor. Let the men sponsor women instead of sponsoring themselves.
Jump on this.
No, we do not have time, people. Let's take a look at the o'clock. Thank you. Now, from the Punch newspaper, FCT outage compromises 500 blood units and hospitals fear shortage. Now, this article coming in says that no fewer than 500 units donated blood were compromised on Friday following the decision of the Abuja Electricity Distribution Company to cut off power supply to the National Blood Service Commission. Now, this article, I'm going to come to you, Lakone, for this. Let's start off with your thoughts on this.
Okay, so it comes back to the same thing we say that if we have um, constant power supply, a lot of things will ordinarily work in this country. Yeah. Now, this is a blood bank, the store blood, and then there's power outage. So all those blood is every day on social media. You see a request, an appeal somewhere, somebody needing blood. So if this happens to a blood bank that stores blood, then what other alternative should we put in place for this kind of place so that this kind of things don't happen?
Now, luckily, I'm going to take this in another direction because when you read further down the story, it comes down to an issue of what they say of he said versus or they said versus they said with regards to bill payments. Now we've had the discos coming out again and again to talk about the fact that they are being owed huge amounts of money in unpaid bills by ministries, departments, agencies, commissions, military and paramilitary organizations. I think earlier on in the year they said about 90 billion naira worth of bills. Because my first thoughts when I saw this was all the blood wasted and the shortage that we have, just like you. But then the other side of this is, as a business,
they're not paying the bills. That's the second part of the story. If you don't pay, that organization has a head, has a somebody who is responsible there. It's in their budget to pay. It's also part of the reasons the power companies give for not giving us adequate power to say that we are not paying for this service.
Okay.
So it's like a circle, right? You don't know where it begins, you don't know where it ends, and it's becoming a chicken or egg situation. Give us power. Yes, we want to give you power. You are not paying. We are ready to pay if you give us power. So the argument is going back and forth. So, for example, these government agencies in their budgets every year they put this amount to pay NEPA. So what happens? Why didn't you pay? Okay, they didn't give us the money. Why did the government not release the money to pay it?
Now, I would like
so
to
that
say
the items that we need to start to query so that we can understand exactly what the problem, because at the end of the day, it is the man on the street who needs the blood that suffers this.
Now, I would like to say that the commission did say that they had paid outstanding bills as of December, but then they were given a new bill.
Okay. Real quick though, Lakona, let's move on to the next story. Still comes to you. We circle back on the Magodo story from the Guardian newspaper. And Magodo Phase 1 residents want the IG to call police officers to order over invasion. I mean, will we see an end to this?
It's actually not the same Magodo. It's not the same story. It's just the same location.
Okay.
This time around, land grabbers have access to
some parts where
the wetlands behind Magodo Phase 1.
Okay.
And they are now selling. So the
land grabbers are now selling.
Yes, to other people who are now developing. Lagos State government has categorized the place as a wetlands, which means that you cannot touch it.
Okay.
Yeah. But land grabbers, what we call Omonile, have now gained access to the wetlands through the estates. They've demolished a part of their fencing. Okay, they've demolished a part of their fencing and they have access to wetlands and are selling. So the residents of these estates are calling the attention of government that they have informed all necessary agencies of government, but they haven't got any response. So that's why it is in the news. Now,
okay. Thank you very much.
What a wonderful way to break. We are out of time, but not out of time for this particular topic, which the headline reads: Federal government to apply Twitter operational conditions to Facebook, WhatsApp, and others. This, according to the Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed. And Fidel, the minister came out and said a lot of things. We're supposed to expect a lot in 2022. Twitter is going to open up an office, going to be paying taxes, going to be doing a whole song and dance. Your take?
Okay, so from the story, Alhaji Lai Mohammed was in Egypt, in Cairo, and he was discussing with his counterpart about his success in, the Twitter ban, and then eventually lifting the Twitter ban, I think after about 200 days or something like that. So basically, Alhaji Mohammed was probably giving tips to his counterparts in Cairo, and he's talking about all the whack-a-mole procedures he used to, before he lifted the ban, or before the federal government lifted the ban. And, he's talking about, Twitter's going to open an office.
In the first quarter.
In the first quarter, and then he's talking about taxes, and then those sound pleasing to the ears of the average Nigerian, but there are other things they're talking about. It says they've agreed to comply with taxes, and then he's talking about enrolling Nigerians in a law enforcement portal and partners to support the portal. He's talking about dedicated channels for the federal government.
Happened, though, because of our time.
All this happened, yeah. So the point is, Alhaji Lai Mohammed is bragging about how they are going to ensure that Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp is going to be, would I say,
to do the
gagged
same.
to do the same, and not just domesticated now. I mean, yeah, the domesticated is there, but how they're going to make sure that if there's anything that they don't like to see on Twitter, they don't see it. Well, I mean, I would have expected Alhaji Lai Mohammed to be talking about things about inclusion, things about, okay, he's protecting Nigerians' data, things about maybe how he's going to ensure that Twitter is transferring technology to Nigeria. But all they're talking about is how they want to ensure that social media platforms close their mouths.
All right.
On that note,
another
okay.
jinx.
Okay, that's my line. All right, so thank you so much, all of you, for joining us for today's very long Freshly Pressed. You can find them up on social media platforms, on Twitter, on Instagram, maybe on other platforms. Where can you find them? So, Blackconley is
at Blackconley70 on Twitter, and
I can never remember.
Mr. C is the Mr. C on Twitter, and Montier C on Instagram, and of course Fidel is ISO10, yes, on Twitter.
Okay, Fidel, what is it?
At Isotena.
Isotena, okay. All right. On that note, we're going to end the show. Thank you for letting me have my sentence, Kennedy. Goodbye, people. Coming up, we have got Lagos Talks at 8:10.
Sounds like
he'll tell you
what's it
on
called?
youtube.com/smooth981 FM Lagos.
Organic chemistry name.
I thought it was a funky name. When you said ISO10.
Actually, his first name is Izotene.
Oh wow.
Fidel is the surname, the last name.
Oh, wow.
Fidel Anyola.
We've been
Oh
calling
wow.
him
Look
Fidel.
at that. Sorry.
Do you want a name change?
No.
Fidel what?
Fidel Anyola.
Where are you from?
Delta.
Wayne Delta.
Delta.